Hi everyone, back again with the second of my videos today, and I've already promised in the last video that I'm going to try to do short, quick fire videos, and the last video ran to nearly 25 minutes, so this one will be shorter, I promise. And this one is a response to the tag that was put together by Christine and Celeste. I'll link her video below, and it's called The 3 Parts of Self-Spread. And I love this because it's a really, it's quite a old tag. You know, it's not a particularly recent tag, but it's taken me this long to get to it. But I had it on my list of things to do because I just thought it was so interesting and thought-provoking and so worthwhile doing. By the way, I've changed my shirt because I was too hot in my cat shirt. It still is quite warm, and I needed to put something lighter on. So, in case you're wondering why I've just gone and changed my shirt randomly, it's not that random. The 3 parts of self-spread, I shall show you. I've drawn it up here so you can tell. Oh, I'm going to need to turn the light down. I also need to do this. You can see it. Can you see that? I'll turn it down a bit more, I think. And then we'll turn it back up in a second. But this is just to explain to you, if I can still be heard here, the way that this works. So there are 3 parts of yourself. The ego, which is your kind of real self, bodily self, self in the world. Let me find my guidance note so I know what on earth I'm talking about. So yes, ego and body, so that's kind of your self in the material world in this incarnation, if you like. Your higher self, which is the highest aspect of yourself within this incarnation, and then your soul, which in this reading context is the eternal self, the part of you, the face that you were before you were born, all that kind of stuff. And you could use, of course, the ego, the higher self, and the soul of your understanding. You know, this is a flexible reading, but in terms of the way that Christina set it out, it's ego, yourself now in this material world, higher self, this highest aspect of yourself in this incarnation, and then soul, your eternal self, the self that you are beyond time and space, if you like. And then, so there are 3 parts of yourself, and there are 3 parts to the reading. So first of all, you ask the cards to show you your ego, your higher self, and your soul. That's the first line. Then you ask what your ego, higher self, and soul want. So what are their wants and needs in this moment? And you ask the cards that. And then you ask what techniques can you use, or what techniques should you use to balance your ego, your higher self, and your soul. And then once you've done all of that, you pull a 10th card, and that card is about looking at what your mission should be, your mission in life, or your mission in order to harmonize and synchronize all of these different elements of yourself. So clearly this is a reading that can be quite in-depth and be quite well, very powerful potentially. So Christine wisely suggests that if you're not in the right frame of mind to do this, then don't do it. What I've done is I have actually done my reading already. So I've rather than doing it live, I've actually pulled the cards already. I haven't really interpreted it yet, but I've pulled the cards in relation to each of these questions, and you know, I'm going to just talk you through them so you get a sense of what how they work. And I'm using for this the Druidcraft Tarot, which I've worked with for a number of years. But I've just got a new copy of it, and I probably will trim it, but I haven't trimmed it yet. But it's a lovely deck. I just think it's a marvellous deck. So first of all, show me my ego. So I got for that the 9 of Pentacles. Excuse me, and I think that to me is actually quite apt, I suppose. Quite apt, quite interesting in the sense that the 9 of Pentacles, I think, is a card that relates very much to material fulfillment and security in the material realm. There's something there also for me about splendid isolation, and I think if I were to be honest, and I'm going to be honest in this reading, there is something of my ego which is has this ideal of, if I could only be totally materially secure and totally self-reliant, then everything would be marvellous and the vagaries of the world would not affect me, and I would be in this kind of splendid isolation and solitude behind my stone wall, in my garden, with my pet falcon, possibly. I think that's quite apt, because of course the material realm is the realm of the ego, and egos are fixated on, you know, getting things, not losing things, getting more, being secure, and the truth of the matter is the ego is not secure, and the material world is not ultimately secure. You know, in this life no one gets out alive, so the ego has an impossible task. It's never going to get the ultimate security that it wants, never, because the moment you have it, or you think you have it, things can change. Or you probably noticed this, you want something, you want something, you want something, you go for it, you get it, you think, yes, I've got it, and then you want something else, and so it goes on. And that's just the way that the ego works, and we're trapped in this perpetual wanting, getting, wanting something else, and sometimes not getting. So the realm of the ego is a frustrating realm. So that makes a bit of sense to me. It's a very positive card, of course, but there's something there a bit idealistic about what the ego wants. Show me my higher self in this life. The 10 of Cups. And, you know, for me this makes, again, a lot of sense, because I think if I was to look at the best aspect of myself, it's actually quite contrasted to this ego, splendid isolation. There's the ego, splendid isolation, and there is the 10 of Cups, which is very much kind of family life, love, companionship, being with others, sharing with others. So I think if I'm at my best in terms of my higher self, then my higher self is about love and sharing and companionship, and not restriction. It's about expansion. So I think that card represents that rather well. Show me my soul. Now, interestingly, we've taken a step back from the 10 of Cups, and we're at the 9 of Cups. And this is an interesting one for me, because I think in this card, in the Druidcraft Tarot, it actually looks a bit more positive than it does in some decks. So sometimes the 9 of Cups makes me think a bit of emotional hoarding, or sometimes even kind of smugness. You know, the guy sitting there with all his cups behind him, looking a bit kind of like, oh, it's marvellous, I've got all these cups. But in that card and in this card, one of the things you notice is that he's on his own. So back to this theme of isolation, but he looks happy on his own, and he's maybe expecting guests. He's got all those cups there. He's drinking a toast to the green man on the tapestry. So there's something there about fulfillment, emotional fulfillment, and perhaps emotional fulfillment in a self-reliant sense, but still from the basis of sharing. So yeah, my soul seems to, my eternal self, in a way seems to balance the isolation of the ego and the companionship of the higher self into something that is able to be isolated and companionable at the same time. Okay, so the next layer down in the spread, just to remind you, is what do these things want? So what does my ego want? What does my ego want? What does my higher self want? What does my soul want? My ego wants the lady, the Empress. A lovely card, an important card to me, as many of you know. For me, there's something there about, not materialism, but about real world growth, natural growth, abundance. My ego wants abundance and natural growth, and to some extent it wants the world to give it things. It wants things to be just given to it excuse me, by the abundance of the earth. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Excuse me. Lemonade up the nose. But it is something about waiting for the world to give it things. So that's one of the ways that the ego operates. So what does my higher self want? It wants a cough sweet. The star. So, I mean, that's interesting, I think, because for me that's about the higher self wanting to give something to the earth. You know, she's pouring nourishing water onto the earth, which is the kind of water that will give the abundance that the earth then can give back. So whereas the ego wants to take and be given, the higher self wants to give, wants to nourish. What about my soul? What does my soul want? Well, we've got another suit here now, and that is the 7 of Swords. Now again, this is interesting to me because it looks, you know, I love this card. I look at this card in the Druidcraft and I think I could imagine that being me in a few years' time, sitting in my hermit's cave with a quill, writing, because I'm a writer, and I'm not quite sure why I have 7 swords there, but I do. Now, of course, in Rider-Waite, you get the image of the guy running with the swords, you know, holding the swords and running away from the, it seems to be running away from the camp, having maybe stolen the swords. So there's something there about cunning, but also for me, in this card, there is something about intellectual focus, intellectual consideration, intellectual security. Again, back to isolation, but isolation with a purpose. So I think there's something there about my soul wanting to learn, wanting to communicate, and wanting to be connected to the intellect, sword being intellect. So I see that actually as quite positive, and it does resonate. Okay, so now we're into the layer, which is about the techniques to balance those 3 things. So technique to balance, or method to balance my ego, interesting, is the 5 of Pentacles. Now that immediately resonated with me because actually, talk about a contrast. What does my ego want? Material security, peace, splendid isolation. What does it need to balance? It needs to have things taken from it. 5 of Pentacles, disruption to materiality, impoverishment in some way, not seeing the abundance that is ahead of it. So maybe there's something there about an ego needs something that actually makes it dissolve, that makes it realize that if it's backing the material world and the world of things, it's backing the wrong horse, because things will pass. So talk about balance. That is a heck of a way to balance. What would balance my higher self? Ace of Pentacles. Now there's something there, again we're with Pentacles, so there's still something there about materiality, but here we've got the cave bear coming out of its cave, perhaps after hibernating. So maybe there's something there about the higher self needing to come out of hibernation and realize that it needs to get back to the root of materiality. The ace, of course, being the root of that power of earthiness and materiality. The higher self doesn't want things. It wants to get back to the first principle that allows things, the world of materiality, to be possible. That kind of core energy. What would balance my soul, my eternal self? The 2 of Pentacles. And again, we're sticking with Pentacles here. So there's some theme here about the need to stick with the Pentacles and the power of the Pentacles in terms of what they mean in relation to materiality. So the soul is about maybe recognizing duality, balancing duality, realizing that in this world something is always going to be up and something's always going to be down, and there being something skillful in that. So utilizing the skill of living in this material world of opposites. And then finally, a mission. What's the mission that would pull all of this together? So what we have is the notion of the ego being fixated on security, but needing to be rebalanced by being sometimes perhaps forced to see that security is an illusion. The higher self wanting to give, wanting to share, wanting to nourish, and also wanting to get to the root of things. And then the soul wanting to marry the soul and intellect share, but in a individualistic way, learn, share the effort, the fruits of that learning, and to balance all of that in the material realm. So what would the mission be? And what I got for this was the Ace of Wands, and for me that's kind of apt again, in the sense that for me wands are about creative energy, our personal creative energy, what we can give to the world, sometimes connected with vocation, my first book, How to Find Your Vital Vocation, sometimes connected with the fiery, passionate part of the self. So again, there's something there about first principles, another ace, and about my mission being to draw out the core energy of creativity and passion. And a lot of what I do actually is related to this. So the work I do as a coach, I'm working with other people, doing tarot readings, doing coaching sessions, writing self-help books, is about drawing out that individualistic, passionate energy from people, because it can be different for everyone. And also drawing it out for myself, and doing those things to draw out for myself. So that is my contribution to the 3 parts of self-spread. So thank you very much, Christine, for the wonderful spread. I'll link Christine and Celeste's original video below, and I hope many of you will do this tag if you haven't done it already. Deep, deep stuff and lots of fun. See you soon. Bye.